We have made it to the final week of the NFL regular season. Playoffs, here we come. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Podcast, the podcast where you don't have to Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Caught my pen flip on the first try in 2025, Grossi. And today, we are going to be breaking down and predicting each game in the final week of the regular season. We got 16 games, and then next week, the frickin' playoffs will begin. Exciting times are ahead of us, my friends. Let's frickin' frack and get it. Last week, I went a very respectable 14-2. I got, of course, my Packers game loss as they lost to the purple incarnation of Satan, and the frickin' Giants wound up winning too. Drew Lock came out of nowhere, giving me a 173-83 record on the season. And Ryan McFadden still stands alone at the top of the Pick'em League, 194-61 record. Absolutely phenomenal. Should be getting 200 picks right this year. So Ryan, a huge shout out to you. I also want to thank you all for rocking with me another year with the Pick'em League. Of course, it's always completely and totally free. We were the fourth largest group on ESPN this year, which was pretty damn crazy, even ahead of First Take. So I appreciate the hell out of you. And I apologize. I know this is a pain in the ass, but folks, this is a free show. It has been a free show. In a couple of weeks, I will have been doing this for 10 years. So I appreciate the hell out of you. If you would like and subscribe this video, we are trying to get to 1 million subscribers in 2025. Trying to get the gold play button on that wall, the spot that's been empty for 4 years. So appreciate the hell out of you. It really helps out the channel. And let's rock 2025. Starting off with some Saturday football. You got the Cleveland Browns taking on the Baltimore Ravens. The Browns, it has been a rough season. Deshaun Watson was not good. They still got to pay him. And even though they're finagling his contract a little bit, they still going to be paying him a ton of money. Last week, the Browns lost to the Miami Dolphins in an ugly game. They have a quarterback problem. I like DTR a lot, but he is not the answer there. And unfortunately for Cleveland, they have to watch Lamar Jackson have another MVP-like season on the team that used to be the Browns.
That looks really good. I should have got that. Look over there. I'm joking.
It's just not good in Cleveland. They're going to be taking on the Baltimore Ravens, who things are looking pretty damn good for Baltimore. They were losing the division, but now have an opportunity to clinch the AFC North with a win over the Cleveland Browns. They will do just that. Their defense has been playing better. Marlon Humphrey is having a phenomenal season. And of course, you have Derrick Henry and a potential MVP in Lamar Jackson. And while this game is super important for seeding and trying to clinch the division, the real question for Baltimore is going to come during the playoffs. Last year, of course, they got the number 1 overall seed in the AFC, fell short in the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs. The Ravens, a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations for them to hopefully win a bunch of games in this postseason to try and make their way to the Super Bowl. Here, I got the Ravens getting a win against the Cleveland Browns. While it is an AFC North matchup, the Browns are just pretty damn beat up right now. The Ravens have plenty to play for to try and clinch the division and get a home game. And so I'm going with Baltimore to get a win. And who knows, maybe Lamar will seal his MVP campaign. Unless Josh Allen does something crazy. Then on Saturday night, another AFC North matchup. You got the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Bengals, oh boy, they are still alive. After starting 4-8 on the season, the Bengals could still make the playoffs.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Now, in order for them to make the postseason, they got to win. The Dolphins have to lose against the Jets, which is going to be tough. And the Chiefs, with their backups, have to beat the Denver Broncos. If those things happen, the Cincinnati Bengals will find themselves in the playoffs. And listen, we know all about the Bengals at this point. The defense, not so great, though it hasn't been terrible these past couple of weeks. But Joe Burrow has been phenomenal. Jamar Chase has had a fantastic season. And I just want to see this Bengals offense in the playoffs because it's just going to make for some good football. But they have a tough order against the Pittsburgh Steelers being played at home. The good news for the Bengals is the Steelers, their secondary, not been looking good these past few weeks. On top of that, the Steelers have not been winning some football games. I know they're going through a gauntlet right now, but they have not looked their best. And I know Steelers fans are starting to get perturbed because Mike Tomlin, are they going to go to the playoffs and then get eliminated in the wild card round again? I don't know. But the Steelers, they're going to have some stuff to play for because if the Ravens wind up losing against the Cleveland Browns, the Steelers can win the AFC North with a win. But they are going to have to root for Cleveland, which I don't know if Steelers fans are going to be able to do that. But ultimately, I would not be surprised if the Steelers actually wind up winning this game. It's a divisional matchup being played in Pittsburgh. However, I am going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals, and I'm just going to go with the law of momentum here. The Bengals, they've been on a bit of a run as of late. The offense is looking good. The run game is looking good. And even though that Steelers defense, besides their secondary right now, is very good, I don't know if they're going to be able to stop Joe Burrow, and a very motivated one at that. So I am going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals to get the win, keeping their playoff hopes alive. And then they just got to pray that the Dolphins and Broncos lose on Sunday. Following that, an NFC South showdown between the Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons. The Panthers have actually had a not too bad month. You had Bryce Young, who'd been looking good. That Cowboys game was really bad, but then they beat the Cardinals in overtime, and you're like, okay, they're so back. And then the Buccaneers game happened, which was much closer the first time around. But the Panthers definitely have a sense of optimism heading into this offseason for what feels like the first time in forever. Cue the song. For the first time in forever. And it's just because Bryce Young has taken some steps. Canales might be the guy there, and it's just about roster building now. If they're able to build up that defense, get some more weapons on the offense for Bryce Young, this could be a fun team to watch in the future. They're going to be taking on the Atlanta Falcons, who... Oh, Falcons. They had a Sunday night football matchup against the Washington Commanders. It was Michael Penix's second start, and the Falcons, they could have had the division. It was in their hands, but the defense just couldn't hold it together for overtime.
I let them slip through my fingers.
And I got to give Michael Penix a lot of credit. While he was not perfect on Sunday night, that 4th and goal throw was absolutely phenomenal to Kyle Pitts, of all people, who caught that touchdown. And the Falcons, they have some optimism as well. And while it could be a very disappointing ending to their season, because if the Buccaneers win, they are in and they will clinch the NFC South, the Falcons, there was a lot of expectations heading into this year. They got Kirk Cousins. They paid him a lot of money. They got laughed at for drafting Michael Penix. Kirk Cousins has not worked out. They started Michael Penix, who, listen, is 1-1 as a starter, even though wins are not a QB stat. And the Falcons just seem like a team that have pieces there, but they're not putting it together. And again, it's tough to judge with Michael Penix because we've only seen him for 2 starts. But at the moment, it seems like things are going to end on a pretty flat note for Atlanta this year. We'll see what they can do in the new year and if Raheem Morris ever calls that timeout. Here, being played at home, I got the Falcons with a win over the Panthers. I think they'll do what they have to do this week, but unfortunately will not make the postseason because I do have the Buccaneers winning. But overall, Falcons fans, maybe they'll be flying high in 2025, and maybe you'll actually draft a pass rusher. Then an NFC East showdown between the Washington Commanders and the Dallas Cowboys. The Commanders getting a big-time overtime win. Jaden Daniels against the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday Night Football, and the Commanders are on their way to the playoffs.
Can I come too?
And it's been such a fun, exciting season for the Commanders. Not so much for their fans. I mean, yes, because you have the wins, the most wins since 1991. That's all exciting. But holy God, is there a team this year that has put their fan base through the ringer with last-second wins? Whether it's Hail Marys, whether it's overtimes. It has been pretty damn wild for fans of Wildflower. And I got to give a ton of credit to the coaching staff, to Jaden Daniels, because that team is definitely in the midst of a rebuild, but it seems like they found their franchise guy in Jaden Daniels. He'll likely be Offensive Rookie of the Year. And I'm just so damn happy for Commanders fans because they freaking fracking deserve it after all those years with Dan Snyder. They're going to be taking on the Dallas Cowboys, who, talking about disappointing seasons, the Cowboys are way up there. When we're talking about Jerry Jones going all in, well, Zeke is all out as they released him, so he could maybe find a playoff team. Hey, maybe Philadelphia. But the Cowboys, it has not gone well. Their season wasn't going well before Dak got hurt, then Dak got hurt, CeeDee Lamb is hurt, and things are just a mess. They got demolished by the Eagles this past week, and Cowboys, listen, I need you to do me one favor. I know we kind of destroyed you in the playoffs last year, and that set things in motion that have not gone well. It's put you down a path you don't want to be on. But this is how you finish the story. After having your season ended by the Green Bay Packers, as long as you help the Packers this year by knocking off the Commanders and the Packers beating the Bears, the Packers will move into the 6th seed. And then the curse will be broken. You'll make the playoffs next year. You still won't make the NFC Championship game, but you'll make the playoffs next year, and you won't be sitting on the couch in January. Well, that's a lie. It'll just be later in January, but not early January. So Cowboys, I need you to get a win here. I don't care what you have to do. I don't care if Cooper Rush throws the ball 75 times. Get the win, Cowboys. With that being said, I think the Commanders are going to win. Then, you got the Chicago Bears taking on the Green Bay mother-loving Packers. The Bears are just waiting for this season to be over. It's really bad. Caleb Williams and the Bears lost 6-3 on Thursday Night Football against the Seattle Seahawks in a game that was atrocious to the eyes, but also a perfect way for Thursday Night Football to end this season. And talking about expectations, ugly. Ugly. There's no O-line. Caleb Williams hasn't looked great these past few weeks. And while he hasn't been throwing a ton of interceptions the past month, which is definitely good, my man needs some help. Now, they're going to be taking on the Green Bay Packers, who unfortunately have now been swept by the Lions and the Vikings this year.
No. I'm doing just fine. There's no meaning to any of this.
It's great. Everything's going well. It's so great. But the Packers, unable to get it done against Minnesota, they just did not show up for 3 quarters. That first half offense was terrible. The offensive line really struggled against the Vikings pass rush. On top of that, Jordan Love couldn't get into a rhythm. The run game wasn't where it usually was, and all those missing pieces in the secondary for the Packers, you definitely felt it as Sam Darnold sliced them up.
None of this is real?
Nope.
So you're just passing
We don't
through.
matter.
The good news is for the Packers is that they're still in the postseason. The bad news is they might wind up being the 7 seed. If the Commanders wind up winning, they are locked in at the 7 seed, so the Packers should have an idea of where they're going to be seeded by the end of this game. But ultimately, the Packers, I still think, can go toe-to-toe with anybody. We're waiting to see if we're going to get guys returning back from injury, like Quay Walker, Evan Williams, Christian Watson. Maybe we'll see him back. Unfortunately, it was announced today by Coach Matt LaFleur that Jair Alexander will likely miss the rest of the season as he is undergoing surgery on his torn PCL. Jair's been trying to recover from that for the past couple of months, but unfortunately, it looks like his season is done. But ultimately, the most important thing is the Packers have made it into the playoffs. The pass rush has to be better because it was non-existent against the Vikings this past Sunday. And the Bears, they're definitely going to have something to play for. While they haven't looked great, it is a divisional game and you never know. But I got the Green Bay Packers to finish this regular season with a win, hopefully getting the 6th seed if the Cowboys can do their job. But ultimately, they got into the dance. Let's see how far they can go. Then, an AFC South showdown between two best friends. You got the Houston Texans taking on the Tennessee Titans. The Texans already locked into the 4 seed. Is any of this necessary?
Necessary? Is it necessary for me to drink my own urine? Probably not. No, but I do it anyway because it's sterile and I like the taste.
But the Texans, Yikes, things have not looked good. Christmas time, they scored 2 points. That is 1 less point than the Bears scored last week, so that's how you know things are going poorly. Their offensive line's not playing great. The offense as a whole with Bobby Slowick not looking great. CJ Stroud hasn't looked great these past couple of weeks. The defense has been really nice, but overall, it has been a challenging season for the Texans. They've had a ton of injuries. The expectations, I think, were a bit high for Houston. They have failed to meet them, but the good news is they still, with all those injuries, with all the crap going on, won their division. Though the AFC South is not very good, they still get credit for that. They're going to be heading into the playoffs, and I think there's a lot of teams that want to play the Texans right now. So I'm actually hoping that the Texans surprise some people because we know how good they can be. It's just I don't know how good they could be this year with all of these injuries. They're going to be taking on the Tennessee Titans, who... it's bad. It's real bad. It doesn't matter if it's Will Levis. It doesn't matter if it's Mason Rudolph. The Titans, it is ugly out there, and they're just waiting for the season to end. They got to definitely go out and make some changes, whether it's going to be going to get a QB in the draft, helping up that offense a little bit. But yeah, I don't imagine this is going to be a great game. The Texans have come out and said that they're not resting their starters, so we'll see how CJ Stroud looks against this Titans team. It is a divisional matchup, so again, I wouldn't be surprised if the Titans won, but I'm going to have the Texans taking care of business on the road, getting a little momentum push before the postseason, and from there, how far can the Strouds go? Then another AFC South matchup. You got the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Indianapolis Colts. Oh boy, Jaguars, you got to win over the Titans last week. That's good. Brian Thomas Jr. has been the brightest spot on that Jacksonville team. He has been absolutely phenomenal this year. Offensive Rookie of the Year, at least considerations should be there for Brian Thomas Jr. It has just been a disappointing year for the Jaguars as a whole. Trevor Lawrence getting hurt, the offensive line and defense, meh. But at the end of the day, Jaguars, at least you didn't blow a divisional lead. I don't know if that's better. They're going to be taking on the Indianapolis Colts. And speaking of blowing things, phrasing. The Colts, they can join the Jaguars and the Titans at the bottom after their absolute meltdown to the Giants. I know Anthony Richardson was not playing, but good God, Colts, that was bad. Losing to the Giants, Drew Lock getting 5 freaking touchdowns on them, and it was just a disaster of a game. And the Colts, because of that loss, were eliminated from the postseason. And overall, holy crap, disappointing season. Anthony Richardson and his health was the most important thing. He said that he was crawling around last week. He can finally stand. Who knows if he's going to wind up playing on Sunday. We might see Flacco again. And ultimately for the Colts, I know that this was a season where there were some expectations of like, all right, what do we have in Anthony Richardson? And I think it's still a question mark for a lot of folks on that squad. However, there is a player without a question mark, and that is Jonathan Taylor. He's had himself a really nice season besides, those fumbles and those drops. But overall here, this is going to be an interesting game. I got the Colts getting the win. I don't feel super duper confident regardless of who the starter is at QB. But the Jaguars, they're pretty darn bad, even though they got a win last week. I think the Colts should be able to get this win. If Jonathan Taylor's playing, he should be able to have himself a nice game on the ground. So the Colts, you get a win in the final week of the regular season. And Jaguars, merry firings to you, because I know that's what your fan base is hoping for. Then an AFC East showdown between the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots. The Bills locked into that 2-seed, baby, and they've been playing pretty damn well, getting a win last week. And apparently for this week, they're going to use a blend of starters. So you'll see a bit of Josh Allen, who is playing at an MVP-like level. We were having this conversation on GPS today about Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson. I think both are very deserving of it. Josh Allen has had a phenomenal season. And they're going to be going up against the New England Patriots, who... Patriots, congratulations! You are the #1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. The only thing you have to do is lose and you keep it. And here, it'll be an interesting game to see if they wind up losing. And I don't know how long Josh Allen is going to play in this game, but as the dominant team in the division, I think Bills fans just want Patriots fans to suffer just a little bit.
Why aren't you miserable?
but they got Drake May, so they should be fine. Yeah, Drake May exiting that game, then coming back in against the Chargers, they got absolutely blown out, and this game could actually be competitive. Again, we don't know how long starters are going to play for the Bills, and I wouldn't be surprised New England getting a win here, but it would be against their best interest to do so. And while you're not going to have individual players tanking because jobs are on the line and they want to finish the season strong, I would not be surprised if the Patriots give the Bills their best effort like they did a couple weeks ago. However, I am going to pick the Bills to get the W here. Even if Josh Allen only plays for a few series or even for a quarter, I think they should be able to put up some points. He didn't have his best game against the Patriots a couple weeks ago, but if the Bills are able to get a win heading into the postseason, keeping that momentum, that should serve them well as the 2 seed. And maybe, just maybe, it's Buffalo all the way this time. Then, boo, you got the New Jersey Giants taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Giants, Drew Lock came in and had the game of his career, knocking off the Indianapolis Colts and losing the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. The Giants, it's been a rough year for them, and while there's been some standouts like Tracy, Neighbors looks to be pretty good, it's been tough going, and the only thing that they could take solace in was the fact they had the number 1 overall pick, but now that's gone too. However, it is not all doom and gloom, even though Xavier McKinney's doing really well with the Packers and Saquon Barkley is doing Saquon things. It seems the Giants' pleas to the Eagles have worked because the Eagles will not be starting Saquon Barkley on Sunday against the Giants, meaning that the Giants won't have the rushing record broken on them by their former player.
You want to hurt me? Go right ahead if it makes you feel any better. I'm an easy target. Yeah, you're right. I talk too much. I also listen too much.
So the Philadelphia Eagles are not going to be starting starters this week. However, we've seen their backups and they still play pretty darn well. Whether it's Kenny Pickett doing well or throwing himself with the football or Tanner McGee, the Eagles are still a pretty damn good roster. The Eagles have nothing to play for as they're locked into the 2 seed, as the Vikings with their win over the Packers made it impossible for the Eagles to clinch the 1 seed. And here, being played in Philadelphia, I'm still going to pick the Eagles. I still think their defense, even with backups, is pretty damn good, and I can't imagine Drew Lock is going to have the same success that he did last week against the Indianapolis Colts, because as Colts fans will tell you, fire Gus Bradley into the sun. So here, I'm going to go with the Eagles to get a win. It is very possible for the Giants to beat their backups, but Philadelphia gets the win, gets into the playoffs at the 2 seed, and I hope you're playing the Commanders. Then, the Saints could do the funniest thing. You got the New Orleans Saints taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Saints, you remember those first 2 weeks, Saints fans? The scoring, the 90 points you put up in 2 weeks. That was a long time ago. Since then, everybody and their mother has been injured. And while they didn't get shut out last week, which is a positive, they still lost against the Vegas Raiders, who, Raiders fans, sorry, you can't even tank right. But for the Saints, it's been a pretty rough season. They have an interesting offseason ahead of them and some tough decisions to make. But meanwhile, the Buccaneers, they might be heading to the postseason with a win, and considering what they did against the Panthers last week, I think the Buccaneers have this in the bag. Why? Because they have a new secret weapon.
That's it. No more Mr. Nice Duck.
Ducky Irving for the win. But the Buccaneers getting a big-time win over the Panthers last week, absolutely blowing them out. Baker Mayfield having a phenomenal performance. And while I thought their season was over after they lost against the Dallas Cowboys, they have willed themselves back. They also better thank the Commanders for beating the Falcons on Sunday Night Football, and their fate is in their hands. If they win against the Saints here, they make it into the playoffs, they clinch the NFC South, and from there, who knows how much damage they can do. I know the Saints are going to want to win this game to try and ruin the Buccaneers' lives, but at the same time, I think Saints fans hate the Falcons even more, so with the Saints losing, they could still screw the Falcons, which ultimately is going to be the biggest win of the Saints season. Buccaneers, they win the South, and from there, let's get to the chaos. Then, Perna, you got the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Denver Broncos. The Chiefs on Christmas having their most dominant win of the season. The offense looked great. Patrick Mahomes, 3 touchdowns, was near flawless. The defense was amazing without Chris Jones, and they locked up the number 1 seed in the AFC. And Broncos fans, you got to be ecstatic considering the news that came out today that the Chiefs will be resting their starters. starters against you.
Kids, it's happening. Get your coats. This is what we practiced for.
Yeah! I love you, Dad!
I love you too, sweetheart. None of the past matters.
There will not be any Patrick Mahomes in this game. It will come down to the arm of Carson Wentz as they take on the Broncos, who it's all in front of them. They could have clinched a playoff spot with a win over the Chargers. They didn't do it. They could have gotten it against the Bengals. They almost did it, but they didn't do it. And so now it's coming down to the final game of the regular season. Win and you're in. Can the Denver Broncos beat the Kansas City Chiefs backups? The answer? I think so. A couple weeks ago, I did put out a video predicting the playoff teams. I did say the Broncos would lose against the Bengals, and I think they will win against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs don't really have anything to play for. However, I don't think the Chiefs want to see the Bengals in the postseason, and if the Dolphins and Broncos lose and the Bengals win, as we talked about before, they would see the Cincinnati Bengals, who I wouldn't want to see that offense. So here, I think the Denver Broncos should be able to piece together a win. It might be ugly, but it's being played in Denver. If Bo Nix can be protected and they can outscore Carson Wentz, I think they should be fine. So Denver, I got them getting a win, getting themselves into the playoffs. And from there, they might be playing the Bills. I'm so sorry. Following that, you got the LA Chargers taking on the Vegas Raiders. The Chargers, they punched their ticket to the playoffs with a win over the New England Patriots, a dominant win. It was great to see J.K. Dobbins back into the lineup. They definitely missed him. Ladd McConkey's phenomenal season. Justin Herbert's been playing well. And the Chargers, in their first year under Harbaugh, are making it into the postseason. Meanwhile, for the Raiders, things are not going well. You don't know who your quarterback is going to be. You're not really tanking very well. You could have had the number 1 overall pick. And at this point, Raiders fans aren't even sure if Max Crosby is coming back.
What's wrong with me? Why can't I feel? Is it going to hit me now? It's going to hit me soon, right?
I'm so sorry, Raiders fans. And here, looking at this game, I don't think it's going to go very well for either team because this is probably going to be an ugly one. I got the Chargers getting the win here. I just think they're a better team. We'll see what their starter situation looks like. But ultimately, for the Raiders, it doesn't make sense for them to win. I know they'll be playing hard because, again, individual players aren't tanking. But I got the Chargers getting the win. I just don't believe enough in the Raiders. Their defense was one of the most disappointing aspects of this season for me. I thought they were going to be super duper good on the defensive side. But ultimately, disappointment. And from there, let's see if the Raiders can get a franchise QB in the draft. Then you got the Seattle Seahawks taking on the LA Rams. The Seahawks getting a big-time win in a barn burner classic on Thursday Night Football against the Bears, winning with a score of 6-3. They go toe-to-toe with the Minnesota Vikings, and then they only score 6 points against the Bears. Make it make sense. They'll be taking on the LA Rams, who were able to clinch their division while sitting on the couch this past Sunday.
Math is a really cool thing. So get off your...
After a win against the Arizona Cardinals where they didn't score much either, the Rams are going to be heading into the postseason once again, and things are pretty exciting for LA. You had Jared Verse, who's been looking really damn good. The offense can be very exciting at times, whether they're going toe-to-toe with Josh Allen and the Bills, or they're not scoring touchdowns against the 49ers. You just never know what you're going to get with the Rams. And if they're able to be more consistent, and we all know about all their offensive weapons, I think they could make some waves in the postseason, maybe even winning a playoff game. This week, though, they will be starting Jimmy Garoppolo, and because of that, I'm actually going to pick the Seattle Seahawks to get a win here. Who knows what the offseason is going to look like for the Seahawks? They definitely need to invest in offensive line, but going up against Jimmy Garoppolo, an old foe of the Seattle Seahawks, I think they should be able to get the win. The Rams don't really have a ton to play for. Technically, they can move up to the 3 spot, but here, I got Seattle getting a win, ending their season on a high note, and from there, yeah, we'll see if Geno Smith does one more year with Seattle. Following that, you got the Miami Dolphins taking on the New Jersey Jets. The Dolphins, they got a win against the Cleveland Browns. They've been playing pretty darn well in December, and I know no one's really talking about them, and they still have their playoff hopes on the line. If the Bengals and the Broncos wind up losing and the Dolphins are able to win this week, they get into the postseason. It was also announced today by Mike McDaniel that it looks like Tua is not going to be starting this Sunday against the Jets, and they are going to be rocking with Tyler Huntley. There is still a possibility that he plays, but McDaniel is approaching this week as if Tua will be out. But they're going to be going up against the New Jersey Jets, who... oh, God, a pitiful performance against the Buffalo Bills. Aaron Rodgers is still one touchdown away from 500 TDs in his career. But honestly, he might be out of options if he's still trying to play next year.
Not a single job in this town. There is nothing, nada, zip. Yeah, unless you want to work 40 hours a week.
It's bad. Aaron Rodgers benching himself, Taylor then going down the field and freaking scoring, an unnecessary roughness call on Aaron Rodgers. It is just a rough time for the Jets right now. And I'll be very honest, I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets wind up winning this game. It's going to be played outside in the cold, and maybe the Jets are going to show up for Week 18. I know Aaron Rodgers is going to want to get that record and get at least 500 touchdowns. But here, I am going to go with the Dolphins to keep their playoff hopes alive and win. Like I already predicted, I got the Bengals and the Broncos winning, so if that was to come true, it wouldn't mean anything. But who knows? Maybe, just maybe, the Broncos will lose, the Dolphins will win, and they'll sneak into the postseason. And with that offense, things could be pretty darn fun. But I got the Dolphins getting a win in Week 18. We'll see if their season comes to an end. And if it doesn't, let's see if they could do something in the playoffs. Then an NFC West showdown between the San Francisco 49ers and the Arizona Cardinals. The 49ers, they put together their best effort and they still came up short against the Detroit Lions. Both defenses said no thank you. Brock Purdy threw a couple interceptions. Then he got pulled from that game with an injury, so I don't expect to see Brock Purdy this coming Sunday. And the 49ers, talking about disappointment, injuries have decimated that team this year. They have not looked the same, and they are going to have some tough questions to answer come this offseason. They're going to be taking on the Arizona Cardinals, who lost this past Saturday, are not going to the playoffs, but Trey McBride got his first touchdown of the season.
Finally!
So that's something, I guess. But heading into this game being played in Arizona, the 49ers, like I said, they looked pretty good against the Lions if we're just eliminating defenses and besides those turnovers. So at least there's some optimism heading into the offseason. But right now, with the expectations that Brock Purdy is likely not to play, I'm actually going to go with the Cardinals to get a win here. I know they haven't looked the same after the bye week. There's definitely some changes that need to be made with that Arizona team. But hey, I think they could beat Josh Dobbs, the guy that they also let go, and he went to the Vikings and he did his whole thing there. But that's neither here nor there. I think the Cardinals should be able to get a win last game of the season. And for the 49ers, next year can't come soon enough. And then, finally, one of the most anticipated finales to the regular season. You got the purple incarnation of Satan, the Minnesota Vikings, taking on the Detroit Lions. This game, holy crap, winner wins the NFC North and gets the 1 seed in the NFC. It literally could not have been scripted better, though I will try. The Vikings getting a big-time win over the Green Bay Packers last week. Unfortunately, Sam Darnold had a pretty damn good game. The defense was causing all types of problems against Jordan Love, and while they were playing a little prevent at the end and that game got a little close, the Vikings had that game well in hand for 3.5 quarters. And with Sam Darnold having the success and the Vikings having the success that they've had this year, Vikings fans are ready to protect Sam Darnold from all those QB-needy teams in the offseason.
If you want him, come and claim him.
Whatever you decide to do, I hope it's the wrong choice. They're going to be taking on the Detroit Lions, who were in a shootout with the San Francisco 49ers. Like I mentioned before, there was no defenses to be found except for Kirby Joseph, who now has 9 interceptions on the year, which is an insane stat. And the Lions, they can go toe-to-toe with anybody. The good news is, as they head into the postseason, they may be getting some guys back from injury. For example, Anzalone, they could be getting him back as early as this Sunday against the Vikings, which would be a huge boost to that defense. David Montgomery could come back in the divisional round if the Lions get a bye. And it feels like both these teams need a bye, but the Lions needed a lot more just to get a bit healthier. Because as we've seen with their offense, they can outscore just about anybody. And it's going to be really interesting going up against the Vikings. The last time these two teams played, it came down to the wire. A couple of costly turnovers for the Vikings wound up sealing it for Minnesota. And if Minnesota can avoid the turnovers in this game, I think they have a really good chance at winning against a decimated defense that is the Lions. And so Ford Field is going to be insane on Sunday night. I cannot wait to watch this game in prime time. And I am going to pick the Minnesota Vikings, the purple incarnation of Satan. I am giving them the win to get the #1 seed and to win the NFC North. Because if the Green Bay Packers get the 7 seed and they beat the Eagles, they will be going to Minnesota. Also, it's a win-win for me. Either I pick the Vikings and I get them all hyped up and then they wind up losing, which I'll laugh, or the Vikings wind up winning and then hopefully the Packers can knock them off and I'll still laugh. So I kind of win either way. But here, I'm going to go with Satan to not make the same mistakes like they did against the Lions in the previous game. The Lions defense is a little bit concerning. I still think they're one of the top teams in the NFL and especially in the NFC. But as of right now, for this matchup, I see them splitting. And so I got the Vikings getting a win. And Lions, use it as ammunition. And if you beat them 49-0, like I said, I still laugh. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Who do you got in the final week of the regular season? I'll see you in the frickin' playoffs. You can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or at Tom Grossi Comedy, all social media, see down below. A big shout and thank you to all the Patreon and YouTube members for supporting this channel. And thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi, and as always, go Pack Go.
And a Happy New Year.